Hey, welcome to Honest Tattooer. We got some critiques coming up, so strap in and let's learn some stuff.
Cool. So this was done by an artist based out of San Antonio, Texas. His name is Ron Kills, R-O-N-E Kills. And he was brave enough to, send this over, and he was, hey, just let me have it. He wants to learn. He wants to hear it. So we're going to give you an honest critique.
Yeah.
And let's take it away.
Do we know how long Ron has been tattooing?
I don't know how long it has been tattooing. I could send him a message right now. Maybe he responds.
Ron, I mean, I'm only looking at the thumbnails right now, but from what I could see, they look pretty legit. I mean, I'm sure we can come up with some stuff to critique, but they look, I would be proud to wear any of these tattoos.
All right, let's do it.
Maybe not this Hania mask. It looks a little funky.
A little funky.
But yeah, let's talk about this this Aztec one that looks like Chimu did. Right off the bat, I'm not going to give you any praise for anything right now. I'm going to say the inconsistency in the circles in the eyes, I hate it.
That's the first thing my eyes go to.
Yeah, man.
That inconsistent circle in the middle. Holy.
I don't even care that they're not perfect circles. That doesn't bother me so much. But the fact that the blue circle is perfectly centered in the circle closest to it, but the two of those are not perfectly centered in that bigger circle.
Yes, that's the biggest issue. The only thing about, the one thing from this tattoo, it feels a little bit too muddy. There's a level of muted tones in here, which could have been done by either too much gray shading underneath or just the choice of using muted tones. I can't tell which one it is. Yeah.
I don't know if there's so much gray shading. Yeah, I mean, there is. Yes. I don't know that.
You see what I mean?
I mean, yeah, I see what you mean.
It's hard to tell.
It could even just be the skin tone of the guy that's wearing this tattoo.
Well, then that would make it just, poor color choices,
Correct. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just poor color choice for the person that's wearing the tattoo. Because for example, I feel like some of the yellow that I see, it is too similar in tone as that person's tone. I feel like that's kind of like a more muted yellow or it leans almost to like a creamsicle kind of yellow tone.
See,
I can't.
That yellow doesn't bother me. I think the gray green of the skull
Of the main part of the
I feel like that is too close to this guy's skin tone.
I think you're right. Actually,
I think
if that had a more contrasting color to that yellow, it would make that yellow look brighter and it would work better.
Yeah. I think he was smart putting the black background behind this to make everything punch out.
Yeah. Sure.
I feel like that black should be cleaner. Make a shape out of it. Do something. It just feels like I don't want to say sloppy because it's not sloppy in the sense that
I'm going to say it's a little sloppy.
Yeah, you're right.
It's a little bit sloppy. There's some whip shading going on, but it's inconsistent whip shading. There's a couple of spots where you're like, oh, that's a nice whip there. But the problem with whip shading is that it needs to be consistent through the tattoo. Once you lose that consistency, then you're going to, there's a little bit of nice whip shading coming off of the right side of the black. You know what I'm saying? Right where those two horns are.
Yeah.
There's some nice whip shading going on there. But then towards the top left of the head of that skull, it looked like there's no whip shading there. It just looks like it got kind of whipped, but not fully. Yeah. And then what you said, that black that's supposed to be in the back is not right up against that edge. So you still see a little bit towards the top of it and also on the bottom of it where it's not right up against that edge of the line. And that would really, I think, set off that tattoo.
Yeah.
A lot better.
I don't know if I said anything about the edge of the line. Just I'm saying the shape of the black. Should be a little bit more of
balanced
an actual
overall.
shape. Something, yeah. Make it look like it's intentional part of the composition as opposed to just throwing some splashes of black in there,
Yeah.
So the top part of this tattoo, that blue aspect, he's got black whipped from the top down to the blue. He left a little bit of skin tone there, or it looks like a white highlight, but then he's got the black background right next to that. From far away, it just looks like the black background is going right into the black part of that blue shading. It's a little weird. You right over there, John?
Yeah.
Crying?
Yeah.
This tattoo got to you?
Oh my God.
So distraught.
So one thing that has always bothered me from the get-go, which is I think is why I didn't like traditional tattooing when I first started. I did more new school stuff. I hated seeing people whip out black and then go directly to yellow.
Yeah.
Like I felt like there needed to be a transition in color, whether it be
Like a brown or something.
dark red, something.
Yeah.
So whenever I see black whipped out and then yellow red on top of it, it looks like this guy did some brown in there though. So I'm not gonna hate on
Yeah,
it. But I'm
there's
just,
a little brown there.
Just
I mean-
putting it out there. When I see black over yellow or yellow over black, I mean,
You know what's crazy? I've seen situations where that looked amazing because it creates such a strong contrast and it looks super bright and super strong. Like,
if it's done right, yeah.
yeah, if it's done right, but it's a challenging thing
Yes,
to do, and
yes.
especially not turn that that yellow into a green.
Yes.
I was going to ask about line work because on certain parts of this, the lines are thick, like by the teeth area, by the tongue.
Yeah, it's super thick, right?
Yeah, super thick. Like some of the line weight is just,
I can tell you it's 2 line weights. He's got
Yeah, there's 2 line weights there.
He's got a heavy line on the perimeter of the entire design, and then everything on the inside is a smaller line.
okay.
That's all it is. It's hard to tell with that black whipped off of that though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like it feels a little unnecessary to have 2 line weights if you're going to pull black off of that line. If you're going to have black in the background, don't let black in your foreground compete with that because you're not going
Yeah.
to be able to differentiate the 2.
For sure.
So do one or the other. Black in the background or black in the foreground and then no black in the background.
That's a simple,
One or the other, yeah.
easy way, kind of easy rule of tattooing. I think overall, like I like the design. The design, I think it's cool.
Yeah.
I think it's just like this slight inconsistencies in the tattoo is what takes away from it. But I like the design. I think it's like, it's wonky, but it's cool.
All right, let's grade this real quick before.
Cool.
Oh shit. Placement. I feel like it's a little heavy to the left.
It's a little heavy to the left. Yeah,
Yes.
because the horns then like curve into the shin.
That's okay though. That wouldn't bother me.
Yeah.
I'd
mean,
rather the horns
Yeah.
go into the shin a little bit and have the rest of the main subject of the tattoo centered. On the
Centered.
calf.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm gonna give placement a 6.
Yeah, I'm going to go with you. I'm going to give it a 6 too. I feel like that's kind of, another thing is that, this leg or however this person's sitting is not the best position to get a picture of this tattoo.
Yeah,
they're
like-
not like, they're kind of just awkwardly in a kind of like a 3/4, like not fully turned to the side.
Which could be the reason why this placement sucks. I mean,
Yeah. Or why it looks like that.
Yeah.
Like it could have been maybe a simple like, hey, dude, turn over, extend your leg and stop moving.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learn to talk to your clients with freaking authority, guys. Like, just be like, hey, you don't have to be an asshole about it. Be like, hey, do me a favor, man. Just turn over, put your leg straight. Just chill out for a second. We're done. You got through the tough part. Let me get a good picture of this. Don't rush through your photos. There's no point in doing a tattoo that took 5 hours, 6 hours, and then you spent 3 minutes taking a photo, and then you're like, go back home, and then to look at those photos, and you're like, oh man, this photos suck.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
know?
not getting that chance back.
You're not getting that chance back. I mean, you'll be lucky if you get them to come back to get a good photo, later, whenever they decide to, but just try to get a great photo that day.
Yeah.
Take
Good
your
luck
time.
asking them to send you a photo too, because they're not going to
good
be able,
one.
Yeah.
Like take a little bit of time goes a long way, and never, take the time of just like, for granted to just be like, hey, let's take a little break, go get a drink of water, relax for a little bit, and then we'll get that photo. Let them bleed out a little bit, let that tattoo relax and chill, wrap it up if you have to.
Yeah.
And then get a better photo of it.
Yeah. This tattoo is still a little bloody.
Yeah, it looks like it was still in that kind of like sweaty looking kind of stage,
Vega, did you give it a placement?
I gave it a 6.
All right. Everybody's 6 across the board. All right.
Triple 6.
Six.
Saturation. I see some problems with saturation. One of my biggest gripes is the tongue, where it's darkest, I guess, by like the cheekbone.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
when it's like as it's in the
Yeah.
back. Yeah.
Yeah, the tongue, it could be that dark red could have been darker.
Yeah.
Not only darker, just filled in more.
Just filled it. That's
Yeah.
what I mean. Like just packed in. You
Yeah.
could have packed in that
Packed in.
dark red.
Same
And
thing
that would have
with,
made a
like,
big difference.
Overall, though, I think everything else looks pretty solid. Like you said, it is a little muddy.
Yeah, like even like in the green that's underneath the eye, that green could have been punched in there, man. packed that in really good.
Yeah.
You know, like the darker green, if you had that darker green, real solid.
Which, you know what, sometimes I'm going to give a little tip of some things that I do because, you know, sometimes you need to do a second coat, right?
Yeah.
And a recent rose that I just did, I had to do this. I was doing it on a knee, and knees are pretty difficult to get saturated. So I'm packing, and it looked pretty good. And then as I move from pedal to pedal, I see 20 minutes later, half hour later, that what I thought was punched in there, it wasn't. It looked a little dull, like how some of these colors look.
Yeah.
And it felt like it was saturated, like there weren't any holidays, but it wasn't bright. It wasn't like really
Just really strong.
Yeah, it wasn't strong. So I let it sit. Like I went back to it later on in the tattoo, and I mean, it sucked for the person getting the tattoo because it hurt real bad going back and layering another session of color over that. You know, I already spent a half hour coloring in this one petal on this guy's kneecap.
Yeah, and you're like,
and then going back and just recoloring the entire
thing all over again,
Yeah.
but it's something that needs it.
Yeah.
You know? Be mindful when you go back into a tattoo like that to either A, you know, you don't have to be as hard as you were the time before. That skin's already open.
Yes.
You know, the skin's it's going to absorb the ink a lot better. So you don't have to overwork the skin, but you know, just go back into it. Make sure it's very well saturated. Make sure they're using water over that tattoo to look at the saturation. It'll help you see how well saturated that tattoo is.
Yeah. Cool. I'm going to give the saturation a 7.
Damn, bro. I was writing that down and you just said it out loud, bro.
You read my mind.
7. For line work, I'm going to give this thing a 9 because I like it.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah. I understand.
The lines they're solid. They're in there, you know, pretty straight.
For composition, I'm gonna give this a 6 because honestly, I feel like this tattoo, just if it was 10% smaller, I think it would have looked better. Just to keep it from going and wrapping so much.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the shape of this tattoo doesn't match where it's going. And that's something that's, you know, I try to explain to people a lot of like, you know, when you paint something, if you paint something that's like in portrait mode, you wouldn't put it on a, you know, horizontal canvas,
Right.
You know, you wouldn't do that. And the shape of this tattoo seems like it would have fit better, maybe like on an upper arm or a thigh, you know, like the upper thigh. Cause it looks like a more round shape, not very long and skinny,
Yeah.
you know? And it could be just a photo, but I mean, from what it looks like, it just looks like it's wrapping around too much. Like I can't see the back of the tattoo and I can't see the front of the tattoo. And that's the problem. Like I would want to see a little, if you lose a little bit of the front or a little bit of the back, that's okay. But you shouldn't lose both.
Yeah.
You know, like it's okay with losing a little bit of those things, but not both. Because then it's just like, you're losing two of, you know, like one thing about this tattoo that I think looks cool is that little kind of tassel thing that's in the back, but it's getting cut off,
Yeah.
you know, and you can't see it. And that's just changing the shape in the fact that it's, you know, it's going on a round object. So it goes back there, it's losing its shape. So I feel like making those choices of like, you know what, I do have to bring, if we're going to put this here, I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. So it warps and it just wraps a little bit less and it's easier to digest.
I partially agree with you. And I'll tell you why. I feel like if it were 10% smaller and you saw skin on the outer edges of the tattoo design, as opposed to the tattoo being filled wall to wall, that would bother me more. Like I'd rather see a tattoo covering the entire body part than having skin exposed.
Well, that's what I mean. Like it would still, like the one difference that it would make is that the black would be the last thing you see.
Right.
That's it. Like, you know, it would still cover the whole body part, but instead of what we see is just the tattoo and then the black fades into the back that we can't see.
Yeah.
You would still see the whole tattoo, but then the background black that he did anyways would be the last thing that we'd see.
One thing that I want to add, and the only reason why this is on my mind is because I just edited the episode with Basilia where we were talking about freehanding.
Oh, yeah.
And I mentioned in that episode that sometimes when you draw on paper or maybe in this guy's case, an iPad,
Freehanded.
it looks great on screen.
Yeah.
And then when you put the stencil on the body, it doesn't really work that well. And I feel like this is a perfect example of that. I feel like the horns in the front jutting straight out, maybe it looked good on paper.
Oh, yeah.
On skin, I feel like the horns, if they kind of
They're
curled
limpy,
down.
yeah.
No, I feel like they should. I feel like they should be curling down and creating more of like a frame, kind of just like framing out the front of the face.
Yeah.
I feel like that would look better and it won't warp. It won't wrap around.
It
the
won't
front.
wrap around so much. For sure.
Yeah.
What's that?
What was that composition?
Yeah.
Composition.
I'm going to give it a 6.
I gave it a 6 too. And then presentation, again, too glary. Straighten out that leg. Background is like, you could have just positioned this person a little bit better just to get a better photo of this tattoo. They were already laying down. Like,
It looks like the photo was taken at like, he was kind of like,
yeah, he
Right?
changed his angle instead of changing his client, you know?
Yeah, like the client, it looks like he's like spread leg open,
You know,
leg out.
What's crazy, I've seen you do this, Vega.
Yeah.
I've seen you tattoo in ways that is so uncomfortable for yourself. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And you're like, oh, dude, look at this. And then I just move the person for you. I'm like, hey, look at this. Can you do this for me? And then they move. And then you're like, oh, wow. I can. I'm like, dude, 20 years of tattooing like that is going to kill your back, bro. Like, you know, and sometimes it happens with just taking the photo, you know, like the person's tired. They're all just laying there. And you're like, I'm just trying to get a photo of the work I did. Put them in the position to get a good photo of your work.
Yeah.
You know, it's your time.
and not only that, that sucks. It kills your back. No one's comfortable, but it's distracting looking at a photo like this and seeing like that weird angle, that weird perspective. You've got 75% of the background as your bed sheet, and then up in the upper right-hand corner, you see the background of the shot.
Yeah.
It's just weird. It's
Yeah,
very
it's just
distracting.
weird.
Presentation, I'm going to give that a 7. It was almost there.
It was almost there. I'll give it an 8.
Presentation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then consistency. I feel like overall, everything is pretty consistent.
Yeah, everything's pretty consistent. I'll give it a 9.
Same.
So that comes out to an average of 44.6. How many of these guys do you want to do?
Maybe like 1 or 2 more.
1 or 2 more. I really like this haunted house one. I mean, I haven't opened it yet, but I feel like looking at it as a thumbnail and liking it, I think that's a good sign.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's cool.
Now that I opened it, I see a couple problems with it.
Yeah, it has a bunch of problems with it.
Yeah. But
When you see it from far away, you're like, oh, that's cool.
It's
And then
got
when
good
you-
contrast.
Yeah, it has good contrast, good composition.
Yeah.
There's things that I like about it a lot. And then when you get up close to it, you're like, oh man, that thing was like just right there. Yeah, it's just
So
right
close.
there. You're so close. That was so close.
You know what? Let's approach this one a little bit different than we did in the past. Let's grade in order of like how we're doing it. Does that make sense?
Give me 1 second.
Let's get into it.
I was saying let's grade and critique at the same time,
Okay.
Cool.
if that makes sense.
So right off the bat, I'm taking this is on a thigh.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
looks like a
right.
thigh.
Looks like it. Yeah.
Looks like a chicken
It
thigh.
looks like a thigh.
Sizing is good on it. I feel like the size, the placement fits the tattoo. So I'll give it an 8.
I want it to rotate clockwise. I want it to rotate clockwise.
Yeah.
Agreed. I
Just
do
a tad.
agree.
I want it's either the photo, but I think it is the tattoo. I feel like the tattoo should be rotated just like
Yeah.
Just
yeah. I want the ground to be leveled on this. You know what I'm saying? Like it looks like it's going uphill a little bit to the right.
Yes.
The right side looks a little bit higher.
It's at a tilt. Yeah.
It's at a slight tilt, just the slightest. Normal eyes would not notice this. This is from the most nitpicky eyes that you can find. But yeah, I agree with you guys. So for that, yeah, I'm gonna give for placement, I'm gonna give it a 7.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
Saturation wise, man, from a distance, this tattoo looks very well saturated. And then when you get really up close to it, you realize that there's Holiday City happening in this tattoo. And I can't tell if it was if it was like slightly intentional, like he thought like, oh, I'm going to leave a little bit of skin here to breathe, or it was just not, because like you could tell that he does use skin as part of the tattoo to let it breathe a little bit.
Yeah.
Like in the wood, boards, which it looks cool with a little bit of whip shading, etc. But like, especially on that top roof of almost every part of like the roof segments, like if those things were solid black, very well saturated, it would change how this tattoo translates so much.
If I had to guess, I would say that this tattoo was done in one session.
For sure. 100%.
And the guy was trying to rush and make sure that it was finished in one session.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Or the person started complaining and they were like, I got to get through this.
One or the other, yeah. But you know what? I don't, probably, but I feel like there were problems well before that.
Yeah.
Because, so you were talking about the wood paneling.
Yeah.
Look at that whip shading is going right into the windows.
That's what I was about to say. I was about to say, look at
right into
the
the
windows.
There's a few times where it's like, it goes right into the window where it's like, man, just like don't whip right into that window, man.
Like you were rushing through that.
You were kind of moving too fast, And then there's little spots too, like in that left side of what is that called? Like the top of that roof, There's just one little tiny white spot. You see that?
Yes.
And that's so annoying.
Right in that
where?
peak, right?
Right in the peak, right in the dot. Like, dude, just grab that liner. Just go like, done.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's something that when you're lining the tattoo, you're going to shade that black. You could just be like, line that and just use your liner and just shade that down a little bit because later you're going to come in with your mag and shade that down.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Even like right underneath that ghost, that there's like a little bit of that line, not saturated right to the line and not saturated right against that ghost. It just takes away from it.
Yeah.
And those little tiny things about this tattoo could have took it from being a 6 or a 7 to being an 8 or a 9. And something that I tell people, once you get good at something, it's going to take 2% to be better. Once you get really good, think about the guys that go to the Olympics. Those guys beat each other by milliseconds, dude. Like that's what set apart a gold medalist from a silver medalist. Milliseconds, bro. Yeah. They're all good. So it's like once you're a really good tattooer, it's going to be minimal, a tiny little bit that's going to set your tattoo apart and people can tell. And in this tattoo, there's a lot of good things that we like about it, And I think that these little things that are here and there could really make it better. There's too many spots where, like you said before, where like that whip shading goes into the window. There's too many spots where they're like, there's lines that are not shaded right up against the line, or there's a line like right by that ghost's tail, There's a line from the house that's going into the ghost.
Oh,
yeah.
I see it.
You see it?
A-line.
Yeah, you see like the tail of that ghost on the left.
Yeah.
The tail of the ghost up top on the left. There's a line from the board that's going into the ghost, and it's just peeking out, just a dot.
Yeah. Yep.
But you see it, it's undoubtedly there. And something simple would have been just to like, hey, just make that line a little bit thicker. Just get rid of that tiny dot that's cruising on top of that thing, man. And it's so minimal.
All right, we're getting ahead of ourselves because that's going to be in line work. And
Okay, so saturation.
Saturation. I'm going to give this one a 5.
Saturation is a 5. I will give it a 4.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it a 5 as well. It's kind of right in the middle of the line. Like it was.
Man, the jack-o'-lantern in the front, I wanted to like that so much.
Mm-hmm. So did I, because I've read in the red in the face looks great, but then it looks so muddy and on the pumpkin, like it looks just so dark and brown and orange. Like there's no breathing room for that orange.
I mean,
to show.
the in that situation, the problem is that brown should be way more saturated.
Okay.
I think that brown could have been way more saturated to be able to contrast with that orange, but that orange should be a brighter orange. So you go, that brown to a brighter orange to a brighter yellow. If that's kind of what he put on the outside. Yeah, but that brown and that orange, they seem so similar. Like there's not much of a distinction in them.
All right, line work.
Line work, shit, man. There's parts of it where it's like, solid and bold, but there's too many times where the line work is going over things. So for that, I'm going to give it a 6. Actually, I should give it a 5, honestly.
I'll give it the 6. Because even though there are problems with it where it's crossing over places where it shouldn't. The line, like the thickness of the line, I feel like
It's very
overall
fairly
is pretty
consistent.
consistent.
Yeah.
Composition.
I like the composition. I think the composition is actually pretty cool.
Composition is great.
You
I
know,
love
like
it.
there's minimal things that maybe could have been different, you know, about the composition. Like I think like that jack-o'-lantern could have been slightly,
Brighter.
just
Needs that
brighter.
yellow.
And as far as where it's at, I think it could have been down and to the right, just slightly, because I hate where the path is. You see where the path?
Oh, it's tangent central
Yes.
all over this place.
Yeah, but definitely like I hate where that, you know, the jack-o'-lantern and the path are kind of touching, but like it's slightly overlapping the path, but not overlapping it enough.
I mean, that happens a lot. Look at that bottom ghost. His tail, I feel like, is just touching
In that little
jack-o'-lantern.
Yeah, in that corner where you're talking about that bottom ghost's tail, in that little corner, there's a bunch of tangents, you know, like
Yeah.
where like the floor meets the jack-o'-lantern. You
Yep.
know, it's like that's what I'm saying. Like if you would have pulled that jack-o'-lantern down a little bit, so it's not touching that floor, you know, where it is. It's not touching the, you know, it's overlapping more of the path, and it's in the ghost is not necessarily touching that either. I think that would have been better.
Yeah. The so speaking of tangents right now, the upper ghost, where his body is crossing over the roof of that peak right there.
Yeah.
Is that peak? Is that line?
I
Is that the peak of the roof? Is that the bottom of the
Yes.
ghost?
Yes,
I don't know.
I don't know. It would have been even
Wait.
just simple just to put a tiny triangle on the top of the ghost. So you're like, no, that
Right
roof
here,
is
Vega.
popping up, man. Like you don't know if the roof ends there or if that's just the bottom of the ghost.
It's just sitting on top of it.
Or he's just sitting on top of
Yeah.
it. And then the hand of the ghost is touching the other roof.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like it's like he's just he's just resting his little ghostly
elbow.
elbow right there.
He's like,
So
what's up,
that-
guys?
and then the tail of that ghost is touching that circle.
Well, I think I think he's trying to make it look like it's coming out of
He's
that window.
coming out of that window.
Yeah, because I thought the same thing as
Yeah.
you, and then I realized that he's coming out of that broken window.
You see, I think that would read better if it wasn't touching all those other places.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I feel like that definitely would read like that if it wasn't touching all those other spots, because it just seems like it's touching all these spots. And I'm like, is this fool just hanging on this fucking house? Like, what is happening, bro?
Yeah. So, oh man, it's so funny when I love this tattoo of the thumbnail, and then just finding more and more problems with it now. I'm gonna give a composition a 4. Nah, I'm gonna give it a 5.
Yeah, composition, I'm gonna give it a 5 as well.
Even 5.
It's kind of a middle of the road. And like, you know, this is a tattoo where I feel like, man, the majority of tattoo artists kind of live at, you know, where it's like, man, like there's a lot of things here that I feel like feel right. And then a lot of things that don't.
Yeah.
And a lot of good ideas, they just could have been executed better. And, again, it's like the difference between playing, you know, in the major leagues or playing AA.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just very small things, and then you can push through and get there.
And you know what, dude? It's funny. Like, it's easy for us to look at this and pick up all these problems.
Yeah.
But it fucking happens. Like, there's so many things that you got to remember. It's easy just to be like,
Oh,
something slip
absolutely.
past
You know, and like, you know, I was at one point in my career exactly at this point where this person is at,
Yeah.
you know, where I did tattoos and I'm like, oh man, I nailed that. But when I look at, you know, just like when we were looking at my tattoos the first time around, I was like, oh shit, man. Like when I did this, I probably felt really good about it.
Yeah.
And now looking back at it, I'm like, oh man, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at that. But, you know, it takes time and it takes, you know, repetition and really being able to look at your shit just like we're looking at it now. And that takes time to sharpen up your eyes and really be able to see these things before they're done and executed.
Yeah. Presentation. This is the best presentation we've seen so far.
Absolutely. Like what we were talking about, like where you said like, man, I really like this thumbnail of this tattoo. When I looked at it as a thumbnail, we're like, this thing looks sick. Cool. You know? So I think like presentation wise, you know, when you look at this, there's not one spot where you can say that this thing is glary.
Yeah, I'm not distracted by anything.
No.
Right.
Oh, sound exact.
Nothing of the glare. It's like no glare, no shit in the background, no awkward things. I'm literally looking at this tattoo.
The only issue that I have with this presentation is that it's fucking off center, but like hair.
A hair.
Just a hair.
Yeah, I agree.
Just a hair.
Move
And
it to the left just a little
just
bit.
a tiny bit, man. It's funny because I said that to a friend of mine the other day. I was like, yeah, that tattoo looks good. Like, you edited the photo well, but guess what? Look at this. And I just did that same thing. I was like, look, there's, the tattoo is sitting like there's 3 to 4 inches above that have nothing. And on the bottom, the tattoo's like sitting on it.
Yeah.
It's like, you want to leave a nice amount of space, even space from the top to the bottom, from the left to the right, center that thing, make it look nice, unless it's like an intentionally, this is like set to the right of the image for a specific reason,
Yeah. Yeah, this should be centered, but it still doesn't bother me so much.
Yeah. It's still not, as strong, but absolutely. Like, even as soon as you said that and I just grabbed the photo and I was like, I zoomed into it just a millimeter.
That's it.
And then put it in the middle. I was like, oh yeah, look at that.
Yeah.
I'm like, that looks good.
I was going to give it a perfect score for presentation, but because of what you said, I'm giving it a 9.
Yeah, I'm giving it a 9 too.
Yeah, same.
All right, consistency. It is consistently inconsistent.
I know. And guess what? That honestly is what makes it look good from afar.
Yes.
If it was like super perfect overall and had holidays, we'd be like, oh my God, look at those holidays. But because there's like holidays a little bit everywhere, there's little inconsistencies everywhere. It's inconsistently inconsistent. Consistently inconsistent. That's so wild.
Yeah, so I think for that, I have to give it a good score.
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to give it an 8.
Yeah, me too.
Give it a 7.
Man, the one thing I feel like, I keep saying the one thing, but one of the things I feel like I would have loved to see a smoother transition between that dark purple and the orange in the sky. I know that that's not a whole like important part of this tattoo, but I'm looking on the right side underneath the moon in the background, that sky. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like that is just a harsh transition from that purple to that like pinky orange right there. Oh
Yeah. It's really harsh. And then like, oh, man, this has happened to me too, where you see on the left side of the house, he left that like kind of edge to be able to show the yellow kind of pop it out.
Yeah.
But then on the right side, that's right by the moon, he shaded right up against that house. And he was like, oh, fuck, I shaded up against this house.
Yeah.
And then he went back to the original plan.
Yes.
And that's when you're like, fuck, I shaded up against this thing. I need to change everything back and everything's going to get shaded up against this thing.
Yeah.
You have to make those calls, guys. Like, it's simple, but it's like, fuck, if you did it one time and you created consistency in something that you wanted, then you got to create that consistency everywhere else,
Yeah. And if that means you fuck up
You
everywhere.
fuck up everywhere.
Yeah.
Kind of like what we were giving it. We gave it a higher score for being consistently inconsistent. I know it sounds crazy, but
I've been looking back at my scores.
yeah, but it makes sense. You know, it's like, oh man, if you mess up on something, just mess up everywhere the same way. Nobody will know the difference, But yeah, I agree with you. If that purple went down and just transitioned a little bit better, it would turn it up.
Yeah. All right, let's add them up.
I have a 39.
I got a 41.
I got a 39.
It gives us a 39.6.
Please make sure that you keep tattooing well. Look at your set objectively. And by all means, if you want to send us your work, please send it. We'll talk about it. If you want us to mention who you are, let us know. And most of all, thank you guys for following us, and make sure that you subscribe, hit the like button, and give us a shout out.
Cool. All right. That's a wrap.
Thank you guys.
Thank you guys.
Peace.